Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Patreon exclusive Nerd Shit in the Dark podcast, The ChaseBase, a podcast where I typically just come on and talk about one subject for the entirety of the podcast. But today I have a guest on to talk about a special little book that you might have heard us talk a little bit about on a podcast before. But give it up for the return of Jake to the podcast. What's up, Jake?
Ready to talk about this book, even though I read it probably 2 months ago now, so I'm
Okay.
not quite as familiar with it as you are.
You didn't
because I
skim
read
it.
so much stuff in between. I did skim it.
You
I
did
did
skim it.
hard skim it, yeah. So I have some stuff to talk about, but I don't. You might be better at talking about like the nitty gritties of the plot.
Yeah.
Because I'm assuming we're going full spoilers.
We're gonna, yeah, we'll start a little tame, but I mean, the difference between talking about a video game and a book is like a video game has a lot of shit you can talk about other than the story. The book is just a story.
Is the book.
So we're gonna talk. The book
Yeah.
itself is The Empire of the Vampire. I didn't say that up top, but you may have heard us already talk about it once before. And I think when I talk about certain plot points, you'll be reminded enough to be like, yes,
Yeah.
that. Because I have a
Yeah,
lot
for
of
sure.
I have a lot of little points to hit on. There was a lot spread throughout that I was definitely like, oh, I gotta talk about that. I gotta talk about that. I didn't take any notes, so I
Yeah.
don't have it in any particular order, but we'll do our best. Beautiful. You have notes. Excellent.
There's certain things that I really like.
That
when I
keeps
was
us
skimming
kind of
through.
yeah. That keeps us kind of in some sort of order while we're going through this book.
But it's also just like specific little plot devices that I like, or stuff that I find cool.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you want to give a quick synopsis of the plot again for everybody before we get into spoiler?
Yeah. So a quick synopsis is that it followed the book. It's written Interview the Vampire style. So it starts off with the main character, Gabriel, is in a prison and he's being interviewed by a vampire. And he goes through his life and he's doing it from two different time perspectives. One when he's 13 and then one when he's about 30. Would you say that's about right? He's probably about 30 when that happens.
I think he says he's 32, I think.
Yeah, okay. So about makes sense.
Yeah.
And when he's young, he joins a religious order of half vampires whose whole mission is to kill all the vampires.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a pretty good basis.
They're monster killers, yeah. And it's set in a world that the sun has been blocked out. And there's a name for that.
And vampires are running the world, essentially. They're slowly taking over the continent.
Right.
Yeah.
And honestly, when you're hopping back and forth, like when you're in his younger story, they haven't really taken over. They're trying to take over, but they haven't really. And even when it goes to
across the continent.
Yeah, and even when it goes to his 30-year-old phase, like they're still not completely taken over either. It's only in like when he's like 40 something, and it's in the present of the book is where the vampires really have completely taken over. So that's very interesting. There's a lot about this that goes on in this first book that now that I'm done with it, I'm like, I gotta know what happens next in the next book.
I gotta know what happens.
Yeah.
So something, maybe this is jumping too far ahead, but I'm very curious to see. So we're just because we're talking about the interview part at the top, you don't know who's in charge right now, like who has him arrested and in like jail. So you don't know who's in control of him at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're assuming it's whoever is running this current, empire of the vampire. But you don't know, it doesn't tell you in the book who is in charge, because a big plot point is that or maybe not plot point, but they talk about that he killed the king.
Right,
And that's right up top.
They let you know right away. That's something
he's known to be the killer of the king, like a king killer.
That's something I like about the book is like there's a lot of pieces of information they give you in the different timelines that like it tells the story kind of out of order, but because of that, I find that very interesting.
Yeah, so when I first started reading it, and when I read books, I don't look up anything about the plot. Which Tori judges me about, but I just jump into them. I don't want to know anything.
Yeah.
And right away, I was super like, I was nervous because I'm usually a person that's like, I don't want to know what happens already, because, in reality, you already know like where he ends up. He ends up in jail. So I was
Right.
kind of nervous that I would be, bored in a sense because of that. And it's just like the exact opposite. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
No, I
And that,
really I really like that. And when I was talking, because I was talking to Braden about it, and he said that he's like, that's confident storytelling. Like if you're willing to give sort of spoilers early on, there's probably a reason for that.
yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's something I think, again, this is the first time I've had a book like this that does it. And I think because he's telling two different stories at once, like something that's so perfect about it that keeps readers entertained is the plot is constantly moving forward. There's literally not a scene. I went back and I was like just skimming through scenes. There's really not a scene that doesn't move the plot forward in the whole book, which is crazy. I mean, it is an 800-page book, but
Yeah.
you should expect to have, other than, the interview scenes, right? They technically don't move the plot forward that much,
Sure.
but otherwise, like those flashback scenes, everything is moving the plot forward.
They're always little refreshers too, because like throughout the flashback parts, you get little snippets of the interview scene, but then it always ends like whatever chunk of the story is ending. Like it'll be like his 13-year-old story will be ending for this chunk of the book, and then they go back and have the interviewer get like a whole chapter again. So I always like that.
Right.
You always knew you were kind of like the story didn't just cut you off somewhere. It cut you off, but it also let you know like they're talking, they're gonna jump. We're gonna let you know we're jumping to a different time frame. So you were never too confused whenever it jumped. And it was
Right.
always, I mean, that's the thing. Every time it got to like a crazy part in one story, it would end and you'd have to go through another chunk of the book to get back to it. And this is
Yeah.
me every time. I'm like, no, I don't want to leave this storyline yet. And then as soon as I get into the other storyline, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. This storyline is pretty good. I do like this. And it
So
was every time, yeah, yeah.
I think I brought that up on the other podcast that's my, so my favorite author is Brandon Sanderson, and he does that with so he's always using different character viewpoints.
Mm-hmm.
And I say all the time, like, you end a character viewpoint and you're pissed that he's
Right.
starting a new one.
Mm-hmm.
But then you read the next character viewpoint and you're pissed you're ending that one to go back to the first one. And that's what happens here. That you're like, I don't want to go back to another one.
Right.
And then you go back and you're pissed when that one ends.
Right.
Yeah,
You're like, okay, I was really involved in this storyline, so let's see how it plays out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like that portion. That's why I'm like excited to start another one, because like the way this one ends, I'm just like, what are the two storylines gonna be in this next one? Or is it just one from here on out? Do we need to have two with the next one? I mean, that's
Yeah, I think he's going to do a different viewpoint as well. I'm guessing because he's not going right because the 13-year-old story's over.
right, right. I mean, he's not even a 13-year-old by the end. He's like 16, and
I think he's like 20 when it ends.
and like there was a lot of like, this is what happens from this point forward, and that's why I don't think I need a lot of detail in like why he gets kicked out of the order. I mean, I know why, but I don't need like the detailed story version of it. You know what I mean? Like they already
Yeah,
told me why. So hopefully it's just like the perspective of him and
they're definitely not going back to that.
Dior.
Yeah,
No.
they're definitely not going back to that.
It would be weird now. It would be the way this
Yeah.
book ends, it would be weird to go back to him dealing with
Yeah.
those characters.
Yeah, and the author has all my trust on that, so I'm not too worried about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because like we're gonna hop around. I'm just the way I'm just gonna say it. Everybody listen to this. We are gonna hop around this book, but I am gonna say the way the story ends. Great scene. I mean, ugh, fuck. Yep, I'm gonna hop around right in the middle of this point I'm about to make. But when his 16 to 20-year-old storyline was wrapping up, like when it did wrap up, and I went back to like his 30-year-old storyline for the final chunk of the book, I was like, man, that was a really good ending. Like I hope that this ending at least matches that ending. And then it overdid it. You know what I mean? It beat out that ending.
Yeah.
So I really
So
like
maybe
that.
I'm very bad at like I just don't, when I'm reading something or watching something, I don't try to predict what's going to happen exactly.
Yeah.
So
I
in
try
the
not
book,
to do that too.
in the book, this like high blood vampire is showing up a couple times, a woman high blood vampire fighting against them at points, helping them at points. And she has super fucking cool powers where she like dissolves into blood butterflies and flies away.
Yeah.
In like a swarm of butterflies. Super cool.
She uses blood to create weapons that she uses, and like different kinds of those weapons can like wrap around other people's weapons, and like the one bitch gets stabbed because the blood blade like wraps around her sword and
Yeah.
then stabs her. So like that was
Yeah,
really
I
cool.
forgot that she killed. I mean, this is big spoilers, but I forgot that she's the one who kills like his companions in that moment. Because she, right? Because did she kill? No, no, it was the high blood,
Yeah. It was the
the
Beast of
demon.
Valine. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, not her. Right.
They have a
Okay.
fight with her right before he shows up and kills all of them. Because like that's
Mm-hmm.
what they're like
But then he
stuck at the one
helps.
church, and she comes to like get Dior, and they're like, "Fuck off, get the fuck out of here" to her, and
Yeah.
they get her to leave,
Yeah.
and then he shows up, Danton
Denton.
Boss.
Yeah. Denton.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. But that's, I mean, the ending, like the big, like twist shock, I thought was fucking awesome.
yeah,
Because you know, in a book where you're like, okay, how's he going to get out of this moment?
right.
You know, and I'm supposed to believe this, and it was very believable.
It
You
was
know,
very believable, yeah, and then like so we are really jumping
it's
around, but
hard
like
not to like full spoil it.
we're
Yeah,
gonna though. We have to. So throughout the story, you learn about these 4 families of vampires that all the half-blooded vampires get their powers from, and we are led to believe that Gabriel, he doesn't have any powers, or so they tell you
right.
that. But he exhibits powers throughout the whole book, and throughout the whole book, you're slowly kind of learning what these powers are and what family line he gets them from. But we don't really find out. That's another thing. There's a lot of mysteries in this book that never, like, you get little bits of payoff, little bits of information, but it never really gives you all of it. Like, I couldn't believe how late in the book it was, and I was still like, what is his power? Like, what can this guy do?
Yeah,
He can do something. He makes people's blood explode, but like, what's that about? And I still don't really know.
right. And that's, I mean, that's part of what's like so exciting about the next book is very obvious. I mean, I'm guessing what's going to happen is his sister clearly has the same power that he does, right?
Right.
So he's gonna. I'm guessing he's gonna go learn some of his power
Mm-hmm.
from her, right?
Definitely has to
And
get.
that's gonna be
Yeah.
fucking exciting, right?
That's that ending, because like I said, the ending becomes the last like chapter basically is too like this dude played The Last of Us. Like it's so much that in a way it sort of takes away from the book, because I'm like, it's pretty much that, but at the same time I'm like, but with the sister being part of this vampire clan still alive and can teach him more, I'm like, I think that yes, it ends very Last of Us, but the way the story's going to continue, I'll forget about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
The rest of the book is so good at the storytelling that it does, and all the new and creative ideas it throws in, that I'm okay with like one thing that's very, very, very similar to something I've seen
yeah. But
10 years ago.
it is awesome in that moment though that he gets like the ceremonial throat cut thrown off the cliff.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, like, come on, that's
Yeah,
pretty awesome.
I mean that's the
Yeah,
moment that in the book that I'm just like, oh god, yeah, how is he gonna get out of this mess? Like he is slit and dying. Like it goes straight to him basically dying. Um,
yeah. And I had no idea where they were going with the woman high blood. Like I did not expect that at all. But like looking back, you're like, okay, yeah, that makes like so much sense. But when it was happening, not at all.
no,
You know,
yeah.
with it, yeah,
No, but all I could think was like, this person's not bad. I like that's what I kept telling myself. But then it was like they were always fighting with her anyways, and she was really trying to kill them. So I was like, maybe she is bad. Yeah, until the twist came that she was his sister, which really only works at the point in the story that it tells you that. Because if they
right. It
told
would
you that
not have been good
any
otherwise.
earlier, it wouldn't have been. Because it's very late in the book when you find out that the sister, was allegedly killed. So
Yeah,
I'm very interested because I mean, you're also solving like, oh, this girl must have to also be the child of whatever vampire made Gabriel, right? So like,
right. So who is his mom out there slinging it for?
right,
That's,
while
you
she
know what I
was
mean.
married to his stepdad.
And another
So
point is that nobody even tests for that bloodline, and they say this pretty early, or maybe like early middle of the book. They don't even
mhm.
test for that bloodline because it's supposedly been died out for thousands
Yes.
and thousands of
Oh, yeah,
years,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So the other stuff I wrote down was just talking about like the kind of basic, like going back to what the Silver Saints can do and how they fight. I
Mhm.
think that stuff's super fun. Like I talked about this in the first time, but they call it the Aegis. That
Mhm.
they're all, I think it's super cool that they're all just like tattooed with silver
Mhm.
all over their bodies,
Oh
and
yeah.
when they fight, they
They
take off
glow
their
and they
shirts and
yeah.
they glow. I thought that's super cool.
Well,
I
that's
don't
what I
know.
mean. When like yeah, the ending might have felt like The Last of Us, but there's so many new concepts, and that's one of them that I also really like. And they get branded throughout their training with like a different tattoo that means everything has a meaning. Everything has its own like meaning's the word, but like it's like everything's a symbol for something in the lore of its own story. Like everything's nothing means anything in our real world, like our world, but it all means something in the world that this guy's crafting, which I
Yeah, it's like
dig.
perfect world building.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's
yeah.
why it's hard to explain that, like, you're touching on it, that I think the religious order, I was so into that, which is not anything in my life that would I would assume I would like so much.
Right,
But
yeah.
it's because it's so, like, everything has its own little point and they have this system set up, and it's just great world building. That's really what it is. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? And you believe it, all of it. It's like perfect,
right.
you
Cuz
know,
cuz cuz we, me and you aren't really religious guys,
at all.
but we can buy
Right. So,
into some cool religious lore.
and that they're so devoted to it.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's super fun in
And
the
they kinda
story
have
and
to
it's
be, like, they're
cool.
fighting vampires, so, like, the only defense against that are these people that are very, very, very devoted to their god and their redeemer.
Yeah, and that their whole thing is they're willing to die for it all the time because they're
Mhm.
so invested in it. Yeah, that's super. It's really good. It is funny because I didn't even think of the Last of Us part, and I think it's because I love the character so much, and it's definitely because I have an authority problem myself. So this guy just like
Yeah.
he
You
just says fuck it to everything they tell him, literally the whole book. Like
yeah,
that the religious order tells him, he says fuck you to every little bit of it, you know?
yeah.
It's so good.
The whole
And
time, and I was gonna say, what I like about, like, all this stuff is, like, our main character, he himself I mean, his younger self buys into it, but even him, he's kinda rejecting it a little. By the end of the book, though, he's very like, "I'm not a religious fucking guy at all
oh, when
anymore."
he's 30, he says he's already said fuck that whole
Right,
place,
right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I think so this was something I found interesting because you're very excited, and this goes to a new plot point as well that I like. But I was very excited because in the interview portion and in the 30-year-old portion, they're talking about all of his great acts as a Silver Saint.
Yes.
You know, like all of these huge battles. And when he's 30, he's running into like random people or former soldiers that they're like, you know, like worshiping this
Yeah.
guy because he's so famous because of all of his great battles that he's
Mhm.
had. So I'm thinking as I'm reading this that either throughout this book or in the next book, I'm going to get like details of all of these great battles he's had.
Yeah.
And that's not what happens at all.
No.
And he only does one battle, which we'll talk about next. But it's interesting because I think it kind of goes towards the like moving the plot forward so well that if you just went and taught, listen, it'd be fun. But if you just went and talked about all these great battles he had, would that really be moving like the actual plot forward, or is that just kind of like it'd be fun, it'd be awesome, and it'd be building this like character to see how high he rose, but it wouldn't be pushing the plot forward. Do you know what I mean?
I do, yeah, and I think the only
So,
way you could do it and move the plot forward is if you show more of those battles, but there has to be something going on in the background of those battles that has something to do with the story. So unless they
and that's how
don't,
he
why
does it.
do it? Yeah, that's
But
how
that's how
that's
he
how
does
this
it with the
story does
one
work. Yeah,
fight.
yeah,
But that's so then the one big fight he does show from his youth that got him famous,
hmm
it is a big plot pusher, right? Like when they go have that battle on the hill
yep,
and it's him, Aaron, and Baptiste, and the rest of the Silver Saints are in a different
yep.
place. I think that's my favorite like scene of the book.
That was
I
a
think
pretty
so.
well. That's what I mean. That's when I said when I got to the ending of his young storyline, it was so fucking epic and intense, and I loved it. That I was like, how are they gonna make? How's the ending of the 30-year-old storyline gonna match this? Because that was such a good. I loved it. I truly, I couldn't stop turning the pages to see what was gonna happen next when it
Yeah.
came to that battle. When it came to like prepping for the battle, I mean, everything leading up to the battle is so good character-wise. Like, uh, I okay, so to backtrack just a little, one of my favorite things about the book too is, like, though it's swapping perspectives and timelines, each timeline, stuff going on in the story always mirrors the other timeline. And what I mean by that is, like, you learn certain things about certain characters in one switch that you'll start learning about certain characters in the other switch. Like, for instance, in one of the switches, we find out that Dior, it ends with we find out that Dior, who we are led to believe is a 14-year-old boy the whole time, is actually a 16-year-old girl. And then it switches to the other storyline, the younger storyline right after that, where we start to learn that Aaron, who we think
Great
is a
point.
bad
Great point.
character, is actually a gay character and a good dude. So, like, I like that. There was always some sort of
Great
reveal
point.
or something that matched the other storyline when you switched. So that was a good moment. That was those character moments that I really dug, because the whole book you're watching Gabriel and Aaron hate each other the whole time, to the point where you as a reader are convinced that Aaron is trying to kill him.
You hate Aaron.
You
You hate
hate Aaron.
Aaron,
Yeah.
right?
And,
Yeah.
and then by the time they develop his character to the point where Gabriel finds him banging Batiste, it's like, oh, whoa, like, I did not predict this being the thing. And then they stand up for each other, and then you see their friendship grow, and, like, they become true brothers. So by the time you get to the final battle, you're like, yeah, these dudes got each other. Like, I'm
Yeah.
a sucker for big bro moments, and that was awesome.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
And then it makes the scene in the future like
Oh,
I'm
dude.
I definitely shed a tear. I'm soft. I definitely shed a tear when he shows up to Aaron's town that
Yeah.
he's running, like his
Mhm.
little city that
Dude.
him and Baptiste run. I literally cried because
Yeah.
it's just fucking
I
awesome.
was stoked. I was so, because the whole time you're running through the 30-year-old storyline, he doesn't really mention Aaron through the rest of the book, and, like, because you don't know, maybe Aaron died. All you do know is, like, because it leaves you
I
off
thought
at
he
one point.
died.
Right, you
I
assume
thought he was going to die
everybody's
on the hill.
dead
I
by
thought he was
that
going to die
point.
on the hill.
But
Yeah.
he's not. And then I don't know, when it switched back to the 30-year-old plot for the final section and they get to that town, I was just like, dude, is this where Aaron and Batiste are gonna live? And they were there, and I was like, yes, they're still alive.
And not only are they there, they're thriving and like they build up the town to like
Yeah.
this great defense. Oh,
Yep.
fuck.
And you learn little things like that's where Gabe got married, and Aaron was his best
Right, with
man, and
Astrid.
yeah,
Yeah,
like, it's
yeah.
just
And then that's also
little
where
things.
I believe that's also the scene where I think it's definitely in there where you learn that they're dead. Like officially learn that his wife
His
and
right, yeah, they really lead you
yes.
on the whole time, because, like, you're wondering, like, what is going on with, because so throughout the 30-year-old storyline, he keeps having, like, visions of his wife that randomly take place. They're always little chapters of, like, visions of his wife, and it's just like, so throughout I'm like, oh, does she have, like, a power that allows her to do this? Like, what's going on? Because you're not
So
sure.
what?
You could
Yeah.
guess, like, maybe they're dead, but, like,
So
you don't know.
because he kept saying, like, he keeps saying that he's like out there for revenge,
Mhm.
right? And he is such a prick that you would believe that he would like maybe like something happened and he left them for a period of time to go get his revenge, right?
Mhm.
Because everyone's asking him, why aren't you with your kids, like your wife and kid? Like, go the fuck home. You
Mhm.
know, why are you out here doing all this? So then she's showing up. What I thought was going to end up happening is that she got turned into a vampire and that's why she's showing up there. And then the kid was left with somebody else or
Okay.
like something of that nature.
Yeah.
That's what I thought was
It's a
happening.
good
And
guess.
then that's what I thought at first when she was like, because the first scene you see her, she's in a window and
Mhm.
she's pale like a vampire and everything.
Mhm.
I didn't think he had the fortitude to just kill the daughter. And because he actually builds Astrid up a lot. The wife,
Yeah, yeah,
he
yeah.
actually builds her up quite a bit in the
Mhm.
in the youth scenes. So I was pretty surprised that they ended up being dead. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll just jump into that chunk right now anyways, because that was one I really want to talk about. But dude, I was at the edge of my seat reading when it finally did the flashback to what happened to his family. And it like,
Yeah.
he starts out, it's another jump in time. It's them living in their little house in the woods and everything's nice and he's tired. You already know, you're aware that they're dead. It's another thing where the story is like, this is the story about how my family died. So you're like, okay,
Yeah.
what's gonna happen? And man, when when the what's the king's name? The Forever King's like actual name? Something Voss.
Dent. He's a Voss. I don't
Yeah.
remember his name.
Whatever. When he shows up at the door and he's got that kid, it's just that whole scene is written so intensely.
Yeah.
I loved it. It was such a heavy
Baby and
read. I
Voss.
was afraid the whole time I'm reading. I'm like, I gotta get through these chapters because I gotta know what happens. But I think I already know what's gonna happen. But I'm so scared what's gonna happen. And the
Yeah.
confidence of this villain, who is like the strongest, baddest vampire. All I know about him at this point is he's the king. He's dead in the
Yeah.
future, but he's not dead now. He's there with all of his family just standing in the background. I loved. I think that's when I knew for me the story was, it did the jump from a 9 to a 10. That I was just like, this is some spooky shit.
Yeah. We should probably talk more about the 30-year-old self timeline because I'm not as good at that one. But we should probably talk about Dior, like why Dior is so important.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was so I love The Last of Us, and I think it's like really cool how that character can. But it's like very okay. Let me say it like this: it's very evident. What's her name in The Last of Us?
Ellie.
It's very evident how Ellie can fix things.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like she's got the cure. She is the fucking cure,
Mm-hmm.
right? So with Dior, you learn there's a big battle in when Gabrielle's 30 and a couple people get really hurt. They get either bit or they get cut.
One guy gets like his throat cut out.
And Dior can come over, puts her hand on the person and can fix them, can seal them up. She also touches vampires.
I think, does she use her blood too? I think that like
that's
part
what
of
it
it
is.
had
She
to do
uses
with
her blood to like
Yeah.
wipe it and fixes them, right? So then you learn she has this like super special power. And then I actually forgot about this until right now. It turns out that she is a descendant of what is essentially Jesus in this story.
She's of the
She's
Jesus bloodline.
Yes.
The Redeemer.
Yes. So I think that's all very cool. But what I was trying to say with like the Last of Us comparison is, and part of what makes me like, I got to read this next book is you also don't know like how exactly can she fix anything. Like, okay, so she's got this blood, right? That like can heal or whatever, but what exactly can she do to stop the Nevernight? I think that's what they call it.
Yeah.
Something like that, or like Evernight, maybe something
that
like that.
Sounds right. Yeah,
something like that, where she is supposedly going to be able, or is like a part of how they're going to be able to stop like this fact that the sun doesn't come out the same way that it used to.
Yeah.
So that's something that's very fun too. Is we like Ellie? It's like you make a vaccine with her.
Right.
Dior, it's like I don't know how they're going to use her to fix anything.
And like the order, the Silver Saints, it seemed like at the end they were gonna do something. They had some sort of plan.
I was so shocked by that, and maybe I shouldn't have been. That's one of my notes. I was very shocked that was their plan.
Yeah.
To go on there and
it comes out of nowhere. It comes out of nowhere.
It does come out of nowhere.
I'm happy when they show up at the end of the final battle with Danton and like the silver gray hands there. All these Chloe's alive. You're pumped. You're like, oh, there's all these people I know and trust.
And then you're like,
a
couple of his older friends from back then.
Yeah.
And then
I started thinking, I was like, oh my God, this is too positive for there still to be this much book left.
But so even with it, like, but then like the cherry on top for me of like, just, I was like, what the fuck is he? So he goes, he's going to save her. I'm like, okay, I got that. I didn't think he was going to fucking kill them all.
Yeah.
He fucking killed them all,
kills
dude.
them all.
He
brutally
kills them all.
He gets to Chloe and he just fucking stabs her.
Chloe, you got it, like Chloe. Yeah, he kills Chloe.
Yeah.
It's fucking nuts. Kills Greyhand.
Yeah.
Yeah, Greyhand's in charge.
Yeah, he becomes like the Khalid or whatever.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. That's another thing. Even though it was very similar to The Last of Us, I did feel like it did its own thing. I knew a lot of the characters that he was killing a lot more than the ones I knew in The Last of Us. Um,
Yeah, that's
l-
another
like
difference
killing
is those
Chloe,
are
very big, very like.
well, and like the difference is too is like he goes there and these are like his that's like his family.
Hmm.
That's been his whole world since he was like,
Yeah,
from like his like building years from when he was like 12 or 13 through like 20 when he leaves.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And he just fucking kills them all.
kills them all.
It's awesome. It's
And
awesome.
and it's fun because like the whole book, they tell you in the interview section that he is the last of the Silver Saints, and you're just like, oh my god, did all the Silver Saints
I didn't
get
even think
killed by
about
the
that.
vampire? Like you're
I
assuming
didn't even think about
they've
that.
just all dropped off over time to only really find out. No, no, he killed them. he killed them
He
all.
killed them all
Yeah, yeah.
at one time.
Because I would
Yeah.
say Aaron doesn't count as a Silver Saint,
No, they
which
left,
is why,
right.
like, he could die still too. But I'm just saying, I hope he doesn't. And this is my
I
way
need
of
more
saying he's
Aaron.
not dead. Yeah,
I
yeah.
need more
How
Aaron.
crazy is that? The whole book, you're like, I fucking
You're
hate
like,
this guy.
this guy, I can't
This
wait till
fucking
this guy
dickhead.
gets hung for
Yeah,
trying to kill Gabriel, and then now you're like, I hope he is like very involved in this
yeah.
next book.
But
I
I
don't
also
know that he
don't
will
because I
be.
don't want him to die. Like the less
Yeah,
they're
the
around, I
more
know
he's
they're
there, the
safe.
more likely he
Yeah,
is to die.
or
Yeah,
Batiste. Like I don't. He's probably more likely to die, Batiste. But
that's who I think will die out of those two.
that's the thing. The book was always, what is it? There's a phrase, tempering my expectation. Anytime I ever thought I knew where it was going, it would change up. Like the final
Yeah,
battle I thought they were gonna have it at Aaron and Batiste's town, but then no, it doesn't happen like that at all. And that happens a lot throughout the book where I'm like, oh, I think it's probably gonna go this way, and then it's like, oh no, it's going totally off the rails. Never mind.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why I
Uh,
couldn't put it down. Is I was just like, every time something shocked me, I was just like, well, I got to see how this plays out now. I got to see how this plays out now.
yeah. Another very random point, but I like I love all books, but I love when a book talks to me how I talk to my friends. So, like, a 30-year-old Gabriel, he is like the most foul-mouthed human on earth.
He's fun.
Like,
Yeah.
but he's like, there is like, I laughed. It's very hard to make me laugh in a book. And I told you the first time we talked about this that I probably like out loud laughed like 3 times.
Yeah.
And the one I can specifically remember, I didn't even see this when I was skimming, but I remember there's a point where they, like, he and Dior at the same time go, fuck my
Yeah. Yeah.
face.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I told you I listened to an interview with the author and they asked him about, like, they're like, dude, you're creating new swears like we
Yeah.
never heard before. And
Sure.
he's like, I'm Australian, buddy. This
Yeah.
is like the way we talk. This is just how we talk.
Yeah.
And it's like a good way to lighten the mood at times that are like, it's a very, honestly, the whole fucking story is very sad.
It's very, and
So
they tell you like the bad things are gonna happen, so it's good that
it's a
there's some
tragedy.
form
Yeah.
of levity throughout because you're prepared for the worst constantly. Because
Yeah.
it's always cutting back to the interview, and he's just like, "I should have known better," and you're like, "Oh fuck!" Like
Yeah, right. It does. It does.
I can
Yeah,
never
I
get
forgot about
comfortable
that.
in a happy moment because
It,
it goes back to modern time, and he's just like, "I was wrong about that." I'm like, "Oh fuck."
it does that like 3, 4, 5 times where he just
Yeah.
goes, fucking should have known better.
Yeah, and you're just like, "Oh fuck, what's gonna happen in this next chapter that ruins it?" And sometimes it takes a couple chapters because sometimes he's like, "I should have known better," and you're reading for a while, and you're like, "I don't know, things seem like they're going okay. What's so wrong?" And then another
Well,
horse fucking dies, and you're like, "God damn it!"
well, it's also perfect too that, like you were saying earlier, like a writer having confidence. Like, it's pretty fucking impressive for him to say, "Hey, this is gonna get bad again," and you're like, "Oh," and then it's always worse than you expected.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? Every
yeah.
time I'm like, "Oh, fuck, again."
Sometimes it wouldn't be as bad as I expected, so I was like, "Oh, that's good," and then something else would happen, and I'd be like, "Oh fuck, okay, here we go again." Jesus Christ,
Another cool
Redeemer,
point.
blasphemy.
Another cool point that we didn't talk about is just, again, like the way that they fight, that because they are half vampires, they do still need to consume blood.
Mm-hmm.
So they smoke dried up vampire blood, and it
Yes.
like juices them up like vampires. It brings their fangs out.
That's another one of
Holy-
those things that I'm just like, it's so new. It's a concept that I've never heard of before. So it was such a cool
Yeah.
feature. And anytime you take those hits, man, it made me think of like how I feel sometimes when I smoke weed, or if I go a really long
Is
time without. You just
super power
feel it.
time.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then I thought it was really cool. I think it's called Sanctus. Is that what it's
Saying
called?
yes, that is what it's
Yeah.
called.
But like I like that, like less strong vampires, the blood doesn't do as much to you, and
Mm-hmm.
then really strong vampires, the blood fucking juices
Yeah.
you up. Because am I
There's
remembering
good weed and there's
correctly?
bad weed. You know.
True enough, right? True enough. Does he smoke or drink his sister's blood at the end? Does that happen before
she
he goes up and?
she gives like because he's mad at her for giving him her blood because he's like, I'm not supposed to drink any blood
But
anymore.
but
She like
she is a
forces it
high
to him.
blood. You know what
Yeah,
they call high blood. So then he's
he
super
has the
juiced to
he's
go up there
juiced.
and just kill his entire
Right. And,
order.
and that's the thing. Like, you can believe that he then kills everybody because he has the high blood. It's not even
Yeah.
smoke. He just drank the blood. So he's literally at the best he's ever been. His Aegis
Yes.
has just, come back to light
Come
for the
back.
first time in a long time.
Another great point. It's like
Yep.
somewhat cheesy, but I love it.
I didn't hate it. No, yeah. I was like,
he's-
I like that that's why it worked again. But yeah, you can.
yeah, it's all based on faith, right? The Aegis is based on faith, and they talk about that when he talks about that when he was in his teens, how much he believed in the Order and what they were doing, and he was known to be the guy at battle that he shined so bright it blinded everybody because he was the most devoted, And now in his 30s, they're all like, use the fucking Aegis, man. Like, we need you.
Yeah.
We need your help. Use the Aegis. And he's like, that's not a thing anymore, man.
And he doesn't
really
really tell. Like, for a long time, you're wondering why he's not using it. And then the priest is like, he doesn't believe.
He doesn't believe.
That's why. And
yeah,
like,
so he can't use it. And then
fuck.
at the end, he's fucking got it.
He
dude.
believes
At the
again.
end, when he's saving Dior, he believes in something again. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little cheesy, but fucking perfect for me.
I didn't hate it.
I love
mean,
it so much.
It worked for me because he believes in her, and she is the great granddaughter of Jesus. So like that counts. I think if you have faith in that,
That's pretty
that
fair.
counts enough.
Yeah.
If not,
Yeah.
if she's gonna end the long night, then I mean, yeah,
Worth
probably the
believing
best
in.
thing to have faith in at this point in time.
Now that we're talking about it more, I don't know if they're going to do a full point of view of the sister, but you're definitely going to figure out, there's definitely have to be some time spent learning like how the sister went from allegedly dying in a village from one of the boss kids to this like ultra powerful highborn vampire. You know what I mean? That's going to have to be touched on in this book quite a bit.
I think so.
So I don't know if they'll do a full point of view of that, but
yeah, I'm really
do it.
curious. I think the next book, I really do. I think it's just going to be one point. I think it's just going to be one continuous storyline. I don't know how they could split it at this point. I mean, you could, but I just don't know. I don't know how.
And then let me ask you this. Do you think we will get, because I think very clearly what's so fucking good and gets me so excited too is very clearly the actual story is still yet to happen, right? Like the actual story is what he's going to do once he's done in this jail cell,
right?
Because
how the third book ends basically is the actual story when it gets to that point.
Yeah, like he's still in the jail cell. He's lost the Grail, right? He's lost Dior, and
so we've been told.
Yes. I don't think she's lost exactly.
I think there's a plan there. He just went and killed the fucking Forever King. You think he just
went
in there like an idiot?
I think that happens in this book.
Yeah,
I think that happens in this book.
Hope so, dude.
Yeah, so I think the actual story is still yet to happen, right? Like what he does. So I'm just, I don't know, man. I'm curious. How many books we're gonna do, how far it's gonna go.
I was looking into the author, and he typically does trilogies. So I'm thinking we'll get 3.
Yeah. I listened to the interview, and he said he wasn't sure yet when he a couple years ago. This was 2 years ago. He did the interview, and it was like a 3-hour podcast that he did.
Okay.
So he said he wasn't sure yet, but fuck, man. Yeah. I'm so happy we talked about this because, my excitement has waned a bit since I read the first book.
Yeah.
But when I read the first book, I was like, I need that second book right now.
You came in very strong for the podcast when we talked about it. I mean, that's essentially
I'm pretty strong now.
Why
as well.
That's why I had to buy the book, and I'm really glad I did because I'm also just sitting here like, I'm glad I got it done on Thursday, so I have a little time to like let my brain wrap around. My copy's not showing up here till Wednesday now, so I won't get to start till Wednesday. But
Yeah.
I'm chomping at
Well,
the bit.
I'm super happy you liked it because I'm always nervous to give book recommendations in general,
Hmm.
but like I have another friend who he reads a lot too. I got him to start reading.
Yeah.
So that's why he reads a lot now. But so I was really nervous that you when you were buying the book, I remember sitting on that couch and I was like,
You're trying to
you
convince
bought
me
this?
not to buy it.
I was
Yeah.
just nervous because they are expensive, right? But it is a beautiful hardcover. Like
Hmm.
that was, funny enough, that's one of my notes that I wrote is that it is a beautiful book.
It's a
At
good
least
looking book.
because you got the hardcover, right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, like on the spine, it has, when you take off the dust jacket, it has mine at least has like the red star on the spine, or
I,
have you not looked?
I haven't looked. I haven't taken my
Oh,
thing
you
off.
gotta look,
No,
dude. It's
yeah.
sick. On the spine, usually there's nothing. On the spine, it's in red, Empire of the Vampire.
Yeah.
It has the Order of the Silver Saint star on
Like
it.
the
It's
circle
really
thing that
cool.
they have.
Yeah, it's
I'll
really
have to check
cool.
that out then. I'll have to go take my.
Yeah.
I don't typically take my sleeves off because I don't know why I worry about them getting damaged, so I just leave them right on the book. But I'll have to go
Yeah.
give that a look. I think the next one's cover looks really good too, so I'm really excited. I like the gold lettering that they have on the new one, so
Yeah.
I'm
I
excited to
wish
see
we
that
could
in
get the
person.
wish we could get the European covers. They're
Yeah, I
actually a little
saw a lot of. I was
cooler.
looking into a lot of
It's thick.
reviews and a lot of the
The
reviews.
European cover is
So here's
great.
another point I want to make. So throughout the book, you had told me that the writer was Australian. So I read a lot of things. It was until I was done and I heard people talking that people were talking in French, and I knew like a lot of it
Yeah,
was
they're
French. A
very
lot of the
French.
names were French, but I still read things as if they were Australian.
Australian.
So like anytime anybody said like we or
Oi.
like
You're saying
I
oi.
said oi. I thought he was saying oi, like an Australian guy. So when they said that they say we a lot, I was like, they say we a lot, and I was like, oh, I guess they do. I guess they do. So when I read this next one, I gotta try to think of it as they're French descendants and not
Yeah, they speak
and
in
not
French quite a
Australian.
bit,
Well, it
actually.
doesn't take place on Earth. You know what I mean? Like
I
on
know. I'm
planet
not
Earth,
giving
it's
you
its
shit
own
for it, but
world.
it's funny.
But I did. I thought about how you told me they were Australian. So I'm just reading this character, Gabriel, as like an Australian, but like a
That's so
hard Australian.
funny.
I saw him as like a mix between just a hard Australian guy and Trevor Belmont from Castlevania. Like that was
Yeah.
my perspective because, well,
Yeah.
this book really hit me because like I had just gone through this whole Castlevania arc of my
Right.
life not that long ago. So like as soon as I started reading it, I was like, yep, this is something I'm into. Because you gave it a 10, and right when I started it, I was like, oh yeah, it's a book that grows to become that 10, but it even starts at like an 8. Like even from the very beginning, you're like, this
Yeah.
is good.
The book starts that hot.
Hmm.
Like, yeah, that doesn't happen for most things that I read. It takes until like, page 100 to 150 before I'm like, okay, yeah, like
Yeah,
I'm totally it.
yeah.
But you get it quick that
I
with
was
that
about
one.
100 pages in the first day I read it because I was just like, oh yeah, let's go. I remember when I started it, I was like, my plan was like, okay, I'm gonna do 2 hours of reading. I'm gonna do 2 hours of recording Persona. Like I'm gonna do 2 hours. I had my whole day planned out, and I ended up not doing most of it because I just kept reading the book.
Dude, when you texted me that you were finishing it, I was so fucking excited. And then I have a screenshot because I was so pumped. That you were like, I had 130 pages left. I couldn't put it there. You know what?
I couldn't put it down.
You just texted me and said 10.
Yeah. By
Yeah.
the time I had hit the end, I was like, I think by the time, like I said, I hit that part where it went back and showed his family die. I was like, all right, we're in. And then, then the final battle kind of happened. So it's like I was already like, this is a 10, and like the crazy battle in the snow against the Danton hadn't even taken place yet, and I was like, I'm sold. There was enough
Yeah.
something with the mix of like the character development of Aaron and then the character development of the relationship between Dior and Gabriel and then all the action. I was just like, yep, yeah. And
You got
there's not a lot of times I like to read. I like to read a lot, but like I don't typically do 130 pages in one sitting. And
yeah.
I certainly did that day. And I even
Shit.
told myself as I was reading it, I was going to take breaks. Like that's where I really knew I was like, okay, I'm going to get to this point and then I'll take a break. And I just never did until the book was done.
So what do you think? Would it be a good movie?
I don't know.
This is the last thing I'll leave you after this, but you think it'd be a good movie?
I messaged you kind of early on into reading it, and I said that I think it would work better as like an animated TV show. I just don't know.
Yeah.
There's so much going on in this book that I think a movie couldn't do it. I
I
think
think
you
it has to be a TV series of anything.
if you make a movie, I don't.
Movies are hard, man. I mean,
Movies are
again,
hard.
dudes had to split. What I know, I got crap for this a couple weekends ago, but what? It's like a 650 or 700 page book that is split into two movies.
Hmm.
And my complaint is they didn't make the movies longer.
Yeah.
So this is an 800 page book. So I don't know how you make it into a movie.
Well, I don't know how you
But
make it into a movie because like so much of what I like about the book is that it's cutting in the middle to have Gabriel talk with what's the vampire's name? Jude.
oh, I forget his name.
Yeah, I have to like see
I
it.
don't remember
It's
his
very
name.
French too, but like I like that, and I
Of
don't know
course.
how in a movie you could cut to that. It would just have to be like over top, and also like I don't know if you do like a movie per perspective. Like I feel like what goes on just with his younger self, that's a whole movie.
It'd be a great movie too. I think you have to do it as a TV series and then do episodes are jumping back and forth. Like
Yeah,
episode 1 is him as a 13-year-old, episode 2 as a 30-year-old,
yeah. I
you
think
know.
that's the only way to do it. Yeah.
But I told you that he's definitely in talks to do something with it already. He's
Okay.
already but it makes me nervous. I
Makes
like
me
when a series
nervous.
is finished. I like when a series is finished before you have these conversations.
Agreed.
But
Agreed.
fuck, is it good? But I will tell you, if I have a vampire glowing from his Aegis on a television series, I will be very excited.
There's a lot of visuals that take place that I would really like to see in live action. But like I said, I'm so nervous about live action. I think it would make for a really good animation because you can do a lot
Yeah,
with animation
of
where like
course.
in real life there's a lot of things happening that I'm like, if they don't give it the special effect work that it
You know what
needs,
the
that's
you
not
know what
gonna
the
look
problem
good.
is? The budget would have to be big, I
I
think,
think so,
for it.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's why Dune works is because the budget's fucking massive.
Yeah.
Um, but so I don't know.
And TV shows
I
don't
know
typically just get a good
have
budget
that
right
big
away,
budget,
especially for a
right?
first season.
Right.
Ugh, that makes
Or it
me
has to
nervous.
be the only way that they would get a big budget if there was a director who has a history
Hmm.
and wanted to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
that
don't
makes
know.
me nervous, man. Because like the more I read it, the more I was like, I like this a lot, and I know the thing to do with books is to turn them into real things. But at the same time, I'm like, I think this is perfect just as the book that it is. My
Yeah,
only gripe, if I were to have any
yeah. Let me hear
negative
your
to say
negatives.
about it, it is there's a lot of time I lose track of where we are with like who's speaking because like I said, it's Gabriel telling the story, and then there's like a narrator telling his present situation, but then it's him telling the story about his past. There's a lot of times I'm not sure who's talking or when they're talking. There was a lot of times where I had to go back up and be like, who is speaking to whom in this conversation and when is it taking place? Because sometimes it'll be like, this is Gabriel saying something in the present. This is him on the next line saying something in the present of the story that he's telling. And this is somebody
Yeah,
responding to that, but it's not telling me who it is. And I have to go back up to see who was talking before to know where the fuck we are. That happened a lot. There was a lot of moments where I was just like, okay, I gotta go back and reread that because I don't know what's going on. But once I
yeah. I
reread
think
it, I got it. But the
I
fact
think
that
that
I had to,
happens specifically during the interview scenes,
yeah.
right? I think that's when it
Well, it's
happens a
because
lot.
of the interview scenes sometimes that you're
Right.
not
Yes,
sure
because
what the
we're
fuck's going
also
on.
talking because during the interview, there's three different possible like times that you're in with three different possible sets of characters that are happening, right?
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
So, and that's my only gripe is like it would lose me from time to time. But I even say in me and Braden's conversation, all it took was me just going back, rereading my because it's also my fault. I'm reading so fast because I'm so into what I'm reading that I want to keep moving, but then it's like I hit a part because I'm like, who was talking? Who said that? There was a lot of like, who said that? Okay, they said that. Greyhand said that.
Yeah. I'm
Um,
trying to think of a gripe myself. I don't think I really have one.
Great character twists, great mysteries. I mean, we didn't really talk about his younger storyline very much, but like a lot of what goes on there, I dug quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I was more into the 13-year-old storyline than the 30-year-old storyline.
Hard to
Just
say,
me
man.
personally. I
Like,
know they're both great, but that's
yeah.
just like tends to be my.
Well, you want to know backstory, especially when you know what, like, you know
And
that
they
they're
keep
all
talking
dead.
about him as
Yeah,
this like figure,
yeah. You kind of
So you
like
want
see
to see
him
how that
as a punk
happens.
kid that like needs to learn lessons, and he's
Right.
hanging out with his Kakashi sensei and his Sasuke,
Yeah,
all that kind
exactly.
of
That's
stuff.
exactly what I was thinking of when that was happening, by the way.
Yeah.
But overall, glad you read it.
Overall, glad I read it as well.
Yeah, fuck
Overall,
yeah,
like I said,
fuck yeah.
I'm angry that Amazon keeps telling me I'm not getting my book till Wednesday. I'm like, I pre-ordered this shit 2 weeks ago. Why am I not getting it on Tuesday?
So, does this mean that in the future, if I come to you with a book recommendation, you would consider reading it?
Yeah.
That's like my big goal. It's my big goal
Oh
is
yeah.
if I'm like, I have one for you that you're going to love.
I love recommendations. So, I mean,
I have other book recommendations that I could definitely give you that you will definitely love. Like,
I
I'm very confident. There's one specifically I'm very confident you will love, and it's better than this.
Oh wow.
So it's saying a
See,
lot.
that's
Yeah.
a good
And
statement.
it's easy to read, not as long, but
Even
that's for another
better.
time.
I have a couple books
So
that I want to work through once I finish the second one, because like I said, as soon as I get this next book, I'm just gonna pound it out. I'm just gonna pound it out.
Yeah. I'm gonna do a Dune read. I think I'm waiting. I'm gonna read that when it comes, and I'm doing a Dune reread after the movie.
That's on one of my
I'm like
lists too.
I'm like full blown.
Yeah,
Like the movie got
full
me,
hard,
dude.
full torque for Dune.
It got me, man. I'm
Yeah,
like in Dune world. Yeah.
it's good.
So
It,
it is good.
yeah, this has been the ChaseBase, and like I said up top, we talked about Empire of the Vampire. Another one of my things is like I think the titles. I wish the title was cooler. Like the title's kind of lame. Do you think
I
that
just like that it rhymes, but
it's
I get you.
it's a fine title, but it's also like I don't know. I feel weird saying it to people. Like it's called the Empire of the Vampire,
It also I don't
but it's
know
really cool.
really kind of talks about. I don't know that the title exactly gives what the book is.
No, not really.
Not exactly,
Yeah.
right? So, Empire of the Damned, is that a little bit of a better title?
I think that is a little bit of a better title
Okay.
for me. Yeah, I don't know what
Good
it
enough.
is. I think saying the
Good
word
enough.
vampire out loud in the title is what ruins it. I don't know.
Okay.
But
Back
yeah,
to the conclusion.
that's this. Thank you for joining us. Like I said, this is a Patreon exclusive podcast. It's gonna go on Spotify for the month of the time being. But if you like this, you can catch more podcasts like this. I want to thank Jake for coming on and not only recommending this book to me, but nerding out about it with me, because I think he's the only other person I know that's read this book, so I don't have anybody else to talk about it with. But
Listen to
thank
the
you.
podcast on Spotify. Join the Patreon. I do both all the time.
All that
I
good
love
shit.
doing these.
Yeah.
Anytime you text me to do one, I will always be there.
Cool, because
you texted me to do this, and I was like, "Fuck yeah!"
Oh yeah, definitely know that I wanted to get it out of the way before I started reading the second book, because I didn't want to talk as if I knew more information. But we're definitely going to
Right.
cover the second book once we're both done with that one. So be ready for
Awesome.
that. I have a lot of ChaseBase stuff planned in this month that I'm taking off to kind of tweak the Nerd Shit in the Dark podcast. So yeah.
Perfect.
All right. Well, everyone, we'll catch you again on the Flibbity Flobbity. Toodles.